to North Carolina Digital Learning Day with North Carolina Virtual Public Schools. I am pleased and honored to have Ms. Taryn Odom, a foreign language Spanish teacher at North Carolina Virtual Public Schools. And today she is going to be presenting on being a tweeter on Twitter. Taryn is not only a phenomenal teacher with us at North Carolina Virtual, she is a Twitter ninja. So please join me in welcoming Ms. Taryn Odom. And Taryn, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, James. And hello, everybody. Hola, bonjour. I am excited to share with you only some things that I have learned, and I appreciate those kind words from James. I don't know if I'd call myself a ninja, but I do thoroughly enjoy Twitter, and I hope to share with you the wonderful opportunities and capability that Twitter has, both for students and for educators, for teachers, or any principals, whomever it may be. You will notice at the bottom of this screen that throughout my presentation, I would really like you to, it's called back channeling, and we're going to talk about that in more detail in the presentation, but I would like you to tweet live, basically, throughout the presentation, maybe little takeaways that you have, aha moments, or questions, suggestions, maybe topics for further discussion or research as we go throughout the presentation. And at the very end, we will review those, and as long as we have time, we will talk about those. If you have questions at any time, feel free to use the chat box, or you may vocally, I say vocally, raise your hand, just interrupt and say, excuse me, I have a question. That's fine if it's urgent. If it's something that can wait to the end, then we will definitely have a Q&A session at the end as well. And so let's get started. Our agenda for this session is going to first kind of just generally talk about what is Twitter overall, look at who exactly uses Twitter, what Twitter can do for you or for your students, how you get started with Twitter, who do you follow, what does follow even mean, and how you do a Twitter chat, some of the best mobile Twitter apps for your phone or mobile devices, and then the best computer Twitter apps that are available and that I've had experience with, as well as some general Twitter tips. So on a very basic level, Twitter is microblogging. Now, you may be familiar with blogs, and several teachers have classroom blogs, or their students have digital portfolios, for example, of blogs of their own. So this is a spin-off of that term, and so microblogging, meaning micro in that it's smaller in 140 characters or less. And it really challenges, especially fellow linguists out there, it really challenges us to learn how to be more concise and yet still be meaningful through those fewer characters. Now, with the internet, there's so much information out there, articles and editorials, and all kinds of information at our disposal. So one thing that Twitter is really nice at is it gives you almost as if it were a caption or a hook into whatever it might be. And so it might just be a statement and that's it, or it might be a question, or it could be literally a caption to a photo that is included, or a link to a broader article. And that's one of the exciting things. So you really get to, as the user, to selectively choose who you follow, and we're going to talk about that in more detail, and what you explore further, and really get to fine-tune your own interests personally and professionally. And for students, those same types of things. So it could be personal, but it could also be more academic type goals as well. So who exactly uses Twitter? Now, this data comes from Business Insider. This is a piece of a larger infographic, but this is recent. So this is as of 2015. So last year, there were over 300 million active users, and this is worldwide. So there were 302 million. I don't know what it is today, obviously a little bit larger, but that's a ton of people. Think about, you are publishing genuinely to a much broader audience with Twitter. Something that in my days in school I would never thought possible that you could have that kind of exposure. So 80% of those users are actually active users that use Twitter on their mobile devices, whether that's their phone or iPad, that type of mobile device. And so that is a huge chunk as well. We know that, and even from my personal experience, we fit things in when we can. Gone are the days of sitting down, eating breakfast, reading a newspaper. And here is the day of looking at your phone, reading the news, checking Twitter, see what's going on in different parts of the world and with different people and organizations. And that's how a lot of people get their news and their networking. And we're going to talk about that as well in a little more detail. So on average, there are about 500 million tweets. And so that's the individual little posts, the microblogging posts per day. 500 million a day. So you might think, well, is anybody working out there? So if you look at 302 active users, that's if every single user is active every day. That's, like 1.5, a little over 1.5 posts a day. And of course, there are some users who are probably more active on certain days than other days. So that is a ton of tweeting out there. A little alliteration for us today, ton of tweeting. Be a tweeter as you tweet a ton. There are 33 languages supported. And for me as a world language teacher, this is really, really exciting because it opens up not only the world to native speakers of English, but for those learning a world language or interested in a world language or another culture, you have a whole nother world at your disposal. So without ever leaving your seat, you can engage in conversation and collaboration and networking with people across the world and in all different countries. So that's languages. The Spanish is a huge part of that. And if you, which I can send this link out that has the active links to these resources, if you were to click on that link and see the full infographic, it breaks down the percentage of users per continent, and that's really telling as well. And Latin America, I will say, is the fastest growing region or area of the world that is using Twitter. So it's booming, and there's a ton of Spanish users, Spanish language users and resources out there. At the very bottom, 77% of Twitter accounts are actually outside the US. To me, that was actually surprising. I don't know about to you, but to me it was very surprising because obviously, we have kind of the Silicon Valley and, a lot of the technology that we have in the world originates in the United States, and so I expected that number to be much lower. So that was an aha moment for me personally, that many accounts are actually used outside the U.S. And that's just another example of how you really can truly broadcast and publish your thoughts and share with people across the world, and not just a small percentage. So these are lots of other students and teachers and professors and professionals that are using this as well. So your network can be much, much larger. On average, users spend about 170 minutes per month on Twitter. So that's really interesting. And just one more thing, if you look at the ages of the people who use Twitter, 16% are under 18. Now that is a little controversial because, I know it was, as a parent, I'm a parent, but also as a teacher, you think about, when to let your child first use social media and which social media outlets that they should use and that kind of thing. So that number is very interesting to me. It's exciting, it's scary, but it's definitely interesting that there are those younger users on there. So 18 to 29 is the largest percentage, and that was very in line with what I would assume, that those are students who are in college, a lot of college students, because it is hence social media. And I would argue that you are probably the most social during your college years. 30 to 49 years, 25%. So these are young professionals and more veteran type professionals and established in whatever their profession might be. And then, as I personally would assume, that rate, or sorry, not rate, but percentage of users declines through the years. But it was pretty exciting to see that 10% were 65 years or older. So I thought that was really cool. Now, what does Twitter matter to you? If you are a student, and I don't know if I don't think there are many students here today, but there are students here today, I would like you to take this back as an educator, whether you're a teacher, you're an ELA, you're an assistant, you're whatever, an educational professional. These are very interesting opportunities for a student, whether it's your own personal child or students that you might work with, to really utilize Twitter in a meaningful way. Of course, we know that social media has those elements where, you tweet what you have for breakfast, or the same thing with Facebook, or somebody posts a picture of themselves going to the gym. I mean, you have that happens, and that's a part of the social media piece. However, there are so many creative ways that you can utilize social media in a meaningful and purposeful way to you personally and professionally or academically if you're a student in this case. So hashtags, you can track those. We're going to look a little more in depth, a little bit about hashtags in a bit, but hashtags essentially will let you access the content that you want at any given moment. And it could be it's one word as a hashtag. It could be a current event. It could be for a class. It could be, whatever's trending at that moment in time. There are a variety of hashtags. Hashtags are also used for Twitter chats, which we'll talk about as well. So hashtags are one of the big things with Twitter. And so if you're not using hashtags, if you're not including hashtags, which of course y'all should be during this live tweeting of using the hashtag, but you should also not only be using them in your own posts, but you should be accessing popular hashtags or things that are of interest to you. So if you are a student and you are interested in engineering, then you might look up hashtag engineering or art or music or theater or whatever it might be. And it could even be as specific as an author or a piece of work or a song that you might look to see what's going on with a particular theme or hashtag. Using Twitter to connect with your classmates, and this includes obviously socially, the social element, that kind of goes without saying through this presentation, but it can also be connecting with classmates and collaborating with them for a common goal or purpose. So whether it might be very directed for a specific assignment, or maybe you are reaching out to them to see their experience and their thoughts on a specific issue. And you can do this without being in the same room with them. And that's one of the beauties of social media, is being able to connect with people no matter where you are, what's going on at that moment in time. And it can be synchronous, which means at the same time, but it can also be asynchronous, which is, kind of come and go. It doesn't have to be at the same time, and that's wonderful as well. You can obviously connect with your teacher, ask questions, engage with your teacher in dialogue about, maybe it's a book discussion from a book that you're reading in class, and you can kind of live tweet your reactions to things going on in the book or your thoughts about a specific character. So many opportunities there. Field trips are a great opportunity to share, those moments, those special moments on your field trip. It could be pictures of you and your friends and what y'all are learning at that moment in time. It could be actual content related to whatever the field trip might be. So lots of opportunity there. Role play is a really interesting one. And this is in, there's, again, lots of, the world is your oyster, so you can take this wherever you would like. But I envision if you were a language teacher, for example, you can easily get assigned characters in a book or a play, and that person has to tweet a whole day as if they were that character. Or maybe you are a science teacher and you assign students and you to be an inventor or a scientist, and so they have to research and then tweet as if they were that person every day, and then they have to engage in others about their inventions or whatever it might be. So just lots of different cool things that can be done there. Of course, taking and sharing notes. Now this, I will say, disclaimer, it does not mean cheating and sharing your notes to give to somebody, but sharing maybe those aha moments or takeaways that you get from a presentation or from a book or from a class lesson. This is not a copy and paste type taking and sharing. Connecting with students around the world. As a world language teacher, this is the most exciting opportunity for my world language students, for my specific students in Spanish, is that they can now connect with other students who are learning Spanish around the world, as well as native Spanish speakers who might exist in different countries. And so they get to, actually genuinely see and experience the different dialects and differences in the different regions in Spanish-speaking countries on a first-hand basis that they might not have otherwise been able to experience, depending on where you live in North Carolina. Now, for Spanish, that's a little easier. But if I were an Arabic teacher or a Russian teacher, that opportunity would be much less. And so social media is even greater opportunity for those lesser known, lesser taught languages to have the same opportunities that a more commonly taught and learned language such as Spanish have. You can become politically active, and this doesn't mean bashing any particular candidates, but really getting to know the issues, following political organizations and political leaders, learning, understanding what they are expressing and the issues that they are discussing, and discussing the issues. So of course you always have some people who use it inappropriately and do the bashing and the negative thing, but we're going to talk a little bit about that. But essentially you should be contributing in a meaningful way. So, delving into issues that matter to you is a great way to get started, and then get even involved in your community. So it might link you to somebody who's close to you, or even in the state of North Carolina, to become then even active in a physical face-to-face way. Twitter reactions to books or movies that might have come out, or that you're studying in class, interviews, networking with others, which we kind of talked about. A Twitter chat, we're going to talk in more detail. Virtually attend workshops, conferences, and/or conventions. Obviously, this is something for teachers to do, but one thing and the reason I put this is for students is because a lot of times there's not either the resources financially for students to attend these things, or the means for them to attend. So this is a great way for students who wish that they could attend a conference to, quote, still attend virtually by following that hashtag chat of whatever the workshop or conference or convention is, so that they still get those aha moments and takeaways and lessons learned from the people who are in attendance face-to-face or live tweeting, without having to spend the money and or the resources to get there, or if they're sick or whatever. So it's a great way to still follow and be involved and aware of what's going on without physically being there. Back channeling is kind of what I'm asking you all to do while you listen into this presentation, and just I've given you a hashtag, which is again NCVPS Tweeter. So you would put hashtag, which is like the pound sign for those who used to use rotary phones, and then NCVPS Tweeter for this specific presentation. Of course, all day today they are using the Twitter chats of DL Day, NCVPS, and then DL Day for the National Digital Learning Day. And so for this presentation, though, the NCVPS Tweeter is back channeling. You're live tweeting throughout the presentation so that others who are potentially not attending right now can see what's going on, and or can come back to it and see those things that were happening during, live during the presentation. There is now the capability to create and take a poll on Twitter, which is something that previously was not available, and that's an exciting thing for students and for teachers. You can go on a scavenger hunt, a virtual scavenger hunt, which is also very fun, especially when you're looking at research on a variety of different topics. It's a really fun way to do research, which goes into the next bullet point of doing research. And then actually reaching out to experts and professionals, and some people try to do celebrities. That's always the most common one. But looking, if you are a science teacher, and having your students reach out to some of the scientists, I'm thinking of, what's his name, Neil deGrasse Tyson, that is very active on social media, people of that nature who are on social media and engaging with their audience. It's a great way. Now, they might not always answer, of course, but it's neat to at least attempt, because sometimes you never know when they are going to answer you. As a teacher, there's a bunch of things on here. So some very common things such as due dates, assignments, a news feed, of course, hashtag we talked about. As a teacher or as a principal, Twitter to me is a very great way to connect with your community, to let parents know what's going on in the classroom, whether it's a face-to-face classroom or an online classroom. For principals, it's important to let parents know what's going on in the school. Parents want to see and know what their students are doing, what their students are learning, what their students are experiencing. And so it's a great way for the parents to feel connected and as a part of a community, and a partnership when they have that open communication and connection there. So that's one of the biggest things for me as an educator is, promoting awareness not only for my content area, but recognizing student work, recognizing exciting things that we're doing in class, in addition to the normal information type post. Following the issues, so whether it's, in North Carolina, and education is a very hot topic right now with the upcoming elections. And so following the candidates and the issues, and as a teacher being politically active and aware of what's going on is super important, in my opinion. If you are as a teacher, you can also live tweet the field trips just as the students can, and role play, same kind of thing. So a lot of these you will see similar to, that were listed on the students. So I'm not going to go through them in depth since we talked about a student on the student level, but just keep in mind of how it could do double duty as both a student and a teacher, and how that perspective, and that it'll be interesting to compare a perspective that a student, like if they're live tweeting a field trip versus what the teacher is live tweeting, and to see if those cross, if there's any kind of engagement there between the teacher and the student, maybe even the parents and the community about that particular field trip that's going on. So teachers also can facilitate research, engage parents, which is similar. And I'm going to kind of skip over some of these things that are more common. For supplementary enrichment, I do want to touch on that. I use that personally because as a teacher, I want to provide additional opportunities for my students to explore the language. So if there are authentic texts that, for example, I cannot use in my course content that might be copyrighted, I can link to them and encourage them to explore them without having to worry about copyright or issues when I try to do my learning block posts as an online teacher. So by tweets, I could link to them in my posts, but it's more meaningful when it's happening, on a daily basis as it happens. And so you can do that. And a lot of times there's several that might come out on one day, and I don't want to post several, different learning block posts. So I just tweet that and say, check this out. Or maybe it's a word of the day for me for Spanish, a Spanish word of the day, or a quote in Spanish that was really cool. And of course, this is not Spanish specific by any means. You can apply that to whatever content area you teach. Facilitating discussions is really interesting, and that can correlate with the hashtags. And this could be fellow content area teachers or grade level teachers, or any common thing, maybe it's online teachers. So lots of different discussions that are happening, especially with those chats that we're going to look at. And then I could skip over those. The networking with other educators, that has been one of the biggest things for me as a teacher, is the opportunity for, in NCBPS we call just-in-time training. Well, there is no better just-in-time training than Twitter for me, because you can truly access current events and that are happening in education, but also the distinguished educational leaders of our nation, not just of our organization and our school, but on a much broader level. So you are getting input from people who are widely respected and known on a variety of different issues, and you can make those connections and have meaningful dialogue as if you were in a PLC or an ELC. And so you can do that in a structured format as if you were in a Twitter chat, or you can just do it, ad hoc, where you just, whether it's via direct message or post and reply on Twitter, are having conversations with those educators about things that matter to you as a teaching professional. The opportunity to, and when we look at terminology, we'll look at this, but the most common way to tweet is just to post a tweet. And so when you do that, it goes to the wide audience. There is the capability to where you can direct message an individual, whether it's a student or parent, whomever, and that is private, just you one-on-one. So it's very important to know the difference, if you're just a beginner Twitter user, to know the difference between posting, which is on your page, public for everybody to see if you've made your page public, or direct messaging, which is one-on-one. And I had, really quickly, one of my son's previous preschool teachers, when I found out he had her, I want to make sure, I want to know who's teaching my child. So I did a little investigation, and she posted some kind of controversial stuff on her Twitter account, and I, took it to the school and asked about it, and come to find out, she thought, because it was just when she, I guess, had started using Twitter, she thought she was sending direct messages to people, but it was really she was posting on her page. And I was like, wow, that's a big lesson learned there. So we want to make sure that you are knowing who your audience is at any given point in time, whether you do want it public or whether you want it private. And we talked about the Twitter chats, and we will in a little bit more in the last two bullets there as well. So how do you get started? Now, I'm assuming if y'all are online teachers, mostly who are attending this presentation, then probably the probability of several of you being on Twitter is very real. But just in case you're not on Twitter, it is very simple to get started and sign up. You can go to twitter.com and then click on sign up, or you can go directly to this link and then sign up. Now, you have to choose a profile name / username / Twitter handle. Those are synonymous. And you want to make sure that it is a recognizable, short, and professional username. So it's something that potentially is recognizable of you and who you are, whether it's your actual name or of your title. Just be careful that you are not using anything that is grammatically incorrect. Of course, that would not be professional. And then also give consideration if you have any change in your situation, whether it's family situation or professional situation, that it's as transient as possible. For example, you might not want to say mama for, or if you're going to be using it professionally. If you're going to be using it personally, then that's fine. But if you're going to be using Twitter predominantly as a professional, then you would want something a little more professional. So you just have to give careful consideration to what you choose as your profile name. Once you do that, you should make it personal. Add a photo of yourself. Now, if you don't want an actual photo of yourself, then a good recommendation is to create an avatar of yourself, which is almost like a cartoon image or character that at least has a personal level to it, so that you don't seem like a computer random, don't know if you're real or not type scenario. So an avatar can give a level of personality there, even without a photo. But of course, a photo is always the best. And then you'll complete a bio. And this is very interesting too, because just as with the tweets, it is very limited. You have to use at least 160 characters or less. And so you have to summarize yourself and who you are and what's important to you in those few characters. And that's oftentimes people change it. And again, it depends on the purpose of why you're using it. If you're using it professionally, so for example, I use it professionally. I do not use Twitter personally. So if you were to look, and we'll switch over in a little bit, if you look at my profile page, which I am at Senora Odom, SRAODOM, if you were to bring it up, you would see that pretty much everything is in my bio is professional. I think the only thing is, I think it does say mom at the end, if I can remember correctly, and it has some of my interests, but those interests are a lot of times a way to connect with my students. So that is the reason that they are there, because if I'm tweeting with my students, I want to seem approachable. I want to see, hopefully appeal if we have something in common, that they can have that connection with me, or if I'm an NC State fan and they're a UNC Chapel Hill fan, and that'll give us a good conversation starter to talk about the different universities and sports. So things of that nature. Just again, give it careful consideration and thought as you write your bio. You can add a link to once that is created, to your profile, to your website or portfolio, or even to your resume, and I include that there. But to your resume, you might link to it. If you use it professionally, then that's a great opportunity for potential employers to find out more about you on a deeper level that might not be included on your, explicitly written on your resume. And then you can also embed it. If you have a website, you can link to it, or you can actually embed a Twitter feed, which is like the post that you are posting. You can choose how many to show. And that, of course, is automatically updated as you post. So, for example, I use it in my courses. Sometimes I post the enrichment activities for my students in Spanish. And so I have a Twitter feed embedded into my course so that they can easily see that without leaving the course. And then if they see something of interest to them, they can click on it and, of course, open in a new window. And then that, is enriching them without them having to remember to go to Twitter to look to see what I'm posting. If they're not already on Twitter, or they don't check Twitter that often, it's a very quick and easy way to connect with them. And then once you have all that done, you want to start to follow some people, and I'm going to give you some recommendations of who to follow. And like I said, at the end, it's going to be a long list, so don't try to write them all down, but I will be more than happy. This presentation will be available so that you can refer to it later and look up those people, because it does take a little work on the front end to search for the users and follow them. And we'll look at how to do that in a little bit. But I'll give you some recommendations both as a student and as a teacher. And then once you do that, you're pretty much ready to go. You can start tweeting, start sending direct messages, and start participating in your own Twitter chats. So here is where I was talking about kind of giving you some information about who to follow. So this is geared towards students if you're a student, but a lot of these honestly are very cool and I follow them as a teacher. So of course NCBPS is the first one there, and then if you scroll on down you can see different organizations, or editorial, but newspaper related or news agencies, things for scholarships, Kid President. I love Kid President. I'm a huge Kid President fan. I don't know if you know who that is, but he is an awesome young boy who is presenting all the time and broadcasting on YouTube. It's kind of where you got to start, about just things of kid that are important to kids and how kids can also be a part of the conversation and a part of the solution for some of the problems that we see every day. And so you have Time magazine. If you're a scientist, there's of course all the different things out there for science. So some of these are geared for science, but there are math ones. There's one art one that you can see there. But whatever your content area is, you can search for, and you can just do a Google search and say, what math professionals to teach, or what math educators to follow on Twitter. You can just do a Google search and kind of weed through that and see what applies to you and what doesn't, and then follow those people. And then of course I always recommend doing the news, and there's several there. That's not all of them obviously, but just some recommendations to keep in touch with what's going on in the state, in the nation, in the world at any given point in time. If you're a teacher, these are my recommendations. This is again not all of them, but these are probably some of the most popular people to follow, whether they are other teachers, they are coaches, literacy coaches, librarians, principals, assistant principals, governmental organizations, nonprofits, just a whole mixture here of people to follow. And then you'll see at the of course, again, NCBPS at the top. And then at the bottom, if you teach in an LEA, or maybe even if you live in, of course, you live in a district, but if you have children that live in a district, following their school, if their school has a PTA, PTO Twitter page, following them. If the local newspaper, for example, I now live in Moore County, so the Pilot here has, a Twitter account, and they post their news stories there. So I follow them, and I'm following Moore County schools, and I'm following, several of the principals and educators here in the county, so I can know what's going on in the county. But then I also have some in the state, and then some in the nation, and then some in the world. So like I said, it's a great and varied network of educators at all different levels in all areas of the world. Now, I've touched on Twitter chats just a little bit, kind of saying Twitter chat. So let's actually look at what a Twitter chat is. And this is, like I said, a great opportunity, whether it's for professional development purposes as an instructor, or maybe it's as a discussion with your class. So you can use it both for yourself professionally, or you can use it with your students. So Twitter, and some people just use it, for random reasons. But those are the two most meaningful things for Twitter chats for educators. They can occur basically any time, but I would say most Twitter chats occur in the afternoon at night. It makes sense because that most kids are out of school, and so they can tune in at that time. You obviously don't want them in a Twitter chat for another class when they're in your class. But now you can, if you have the capability and the resources at your school, have a Twitter chat in class. But then one would argue, what's the point in that if you could just chat in face-to-face? So but they usually last around an hour. It depends, and they are also usually guided. There's usually some sort of leader or guide who will post specific questions or topics, and then the participants will respond and answer those questions, or engage and give ideas or thoughts on any given topic. And so you'll see participants tweet on whatever the topics are in real time. And that, again, they could just be brainstorming ideas. They could actually be collaborating to come up with a common product or solution for something. Or they might just be bouncing around random ideas or inspirations and things like that. So lots of different purposes in that aspect. The best way to participate in a Twitter chat is to search the hashtag. So again, that looks like the pound sign is the number sign, or you'll hear it referred to as a hashtag. So again, they're synonymous. And then whatever it might be for that specific Twitter chat. Now, as a teacher, one of the biggest Twitter chats that we have is Ed Chat, ED Chat. And so you would type that into the search box, and it would bring up everything that has happened previously in any of the Ed Chats. And you can literally scroll through and see, this week's Ed Chat, which was last night, and last week's, because it's for Ed Chat, it's once a week, and you can scroll and see last week's. And I mean, as much time as you have, you can spend scrolling through that. You can do it after the fact if you're not able to attend live, which is one of the beauties of the Twitter chats, because if you have a busy schedule, you can still participate in the chat even if it's not in live time. Of course, you're not going to get the same benefits out of it potentially as if you were in participating in live time or real time, but there are still obviously benefits. You're just not going to have the back and forth that you might have if you were there live. You can use like Twitter app from your computer. You can use Twitter app from your phone or mobile device, or if you want to branch out and you feel a little more comfortable with what Twitter is and how to use it, I encourage you to seek out some more specialized apps, and I'm going to give you a list of those. The two most common, I would say, are Hootsuite and TweetDeck, and I'm going to give you a look at that and just a little bit of what those look like and how they work. But they allow you to see multiple chats at the same time and basically multitask in essence, so that you can access content in a much more efficient way and respond and follow things more efficient without having to scroll, update, scroll. So we'll take a look at that in a little bit. And you just reply to the questions as asked. And this is something that usually the leader or the guide of the Twitter chat will explain in the very beginning of, I will be facilitating this chat tonight or today. We will go through however many questions. Please respond, the question will be in this format. Please answer in this format. And so you see an example there in parentheses. A common one is put Q1, which is question 1. And this is just a silly example, but it might be, what is your name and where are you from? And so then you as a participant should respond in that same format. And so you might put A1, meaning answer 1, and then you say, my name is blank and I'm from blank. And as long as you're in the characters and you post that. And so that's a way for everybody to basically virtually introduce themselves, so you know who is participating at the Ed Chat, since obviously you can't see them face to face. So you know who your audience is and who you're going to be talking with in that specific session. And then the facilitator, the guide, or the leader, whatever you want to call that person, will then go to the next question. And depending on what type of chat you're participating in and who's leading it, sometimes there are, just as if with a teacher in any lesson, there's a little variance. So you just have to participate and follow. And again, if you are doing it after the fact, you can scroll through the questions and answers, and then you can come back after the fact. Even though they might have, let's say they have 5 questions, they've done all 5 questions and 5 answers, you're now coming in at 9 or 10 o'clock at night because you just sat down, and you can go in and just say, okay, A1, and do your answers, even though they've already been asked. Because most people, especially the religious followers of the Twitter chats, they check that daily or periodically, even when the chat is not happening live, because even though that same hashtag is used for the Twitter chat, that same hashtag is also used for just general sharing of ideas at any point in time. So I gave the example of Ed Chat. There's a specific time when Ed Chat happens, which is usually Tuesday nights. But there are people posting with that hashtag, at all hours of the day, on every single day, to share basically with that same cohort or that group of things that they found or ideas or things they want to bounce off at each other. So that hashtag is multi-purpose in that aspect. And then you refresh, you reply, you retweet, you review, you reflect, and you repeat. All of my R's there. I love the alliteration. And there's a great link here. So once you get the presentation, I want you to visit. And if we have time at the end, we'll go look at this. This is a great list of basically all of the most common Twitter hashtags or Twitter chats for education. So Ed Chat would be the most common one, but there's Lang Chat for language teachers, there's Math Chat, Art Chat, all the different content areas usually have one. There's one for administrators, librarians, there's one. You can get into specific, if it's Spanish teachers, or if you're ESL, you can get into, those more the different categories based on your content areas or your commonalities. So here, obviously you have just the Twitter app for iPhone or Android if you're using um, an, a Google device. But I encourage you to seek out, I mean, they actually have been improved. The Twitter app used to not be that great, and they have improved. It is better. But there are also other third-party Twitter clients or apps that work just as good, if not better, than the actual Twitter app. So I encourage you to seek out some and see what works best for you. I mean, a lot of it is just personal preference, what appeals to your organizational style or personality or whatever. And they might have some different functionality or features. And so just kind of research what's best for you. And I have 2 links here that show you some, quote, their recommendations or best Twitter apps for iPhone, and then best Twitter apps for Android for phones and mobile devices. And on this screen, you can see this is actually Twitter for iPhone. I have an iPhone, so that's what you see here. I do have, personally, I use Echo Phone, and it's probably not the best one that they have now. It's, at the time, when I was downloading and researching, it was the best one that I found, but there have been many new apps that have come out since then that are probably better, but that's the one that I often use, and it's Echo and then F-O-N. So Echo Phone, Echo Fun, I don't know how you say it, but it's F-O-N is one that I also use. As far as computer, these are some popular and common computer apps that you might use. And what you see on the screen is Hootsuite, and that's I've used TweetDeck and I've used Hootsuite. I've kind of gone back and forth between them. Currently, I like Hootsuite better. On this image, you can see that you can see my homepage, and these are just some random people that I follow. Then on the right-hand side, you'll see EdChat, Digital Learning Day, the hashtag, and then EdTech Chat. So I can follow multiple chats or topics on the same screen. So and it can refresh automatically, or you can manually refresh it, and that kind of keeps me aware. But one of the cool things about Hootsuite that I do like that TweetDeck does not do, or at least it didn't used to do, is that you can follow multiple social media outlets. So if you have a Facebook and a Twitter and a LinkedIn or whatever, you can add multiple ones there, so you can see all of them on one screen without having to have Facebook open, Twitter open, etc. Twitter Mail just allows, and Twitterfix is similar. Twitter Mail allows you to tweet from your email. So if but to me, it seems kind of like a moot point. Like if most people have a smartphone, they would just use the app and not do it from their phone. But maybe you're from a computer or that doesn't have access, and that's the best way to do it. So that's just an option. Tweetbot is more like the notifications. You can enable notifications if you want to stay on top of a specific chat or topic. This is really good as a teacher if you're using a Twitter chat in your class and you want to see students, like if you're using it as a formative assessment tool and you want to see what they're typing at any given point in time, and it pops up so you can then respond to them immediately. That is available too. And so then I give you a link for just general, the best Twitter apps to download. All right, some of my just tips, and these are not mine. I added some of mine, and some of these are from the sites listed here. But first, just learn the basics. It can be overwhelming because there's so much out there, but just start small. Create your account. You want to introduce yourself. Tell your network that you work with, whether it's your face-to-face environment. If you work face-to-face, tell your online teachers, like if you're part of a team, or obviously you're part of a team, but tell your team or your department, that you're on Twitter. Give them your Twitter handle. So again, mine's like @Senora Odom. I say, hey, I'm on Twitter, guys, follow me, or, let me know who I should follow, and ask them for recommendations on who to follow, because a lot of times word of mouth is, as we know, one of the best ways to communicate those types of things. Get the tools that you need, whether you have a smartphone and you need to download the app, or if you have an iPad and you need to download the app there, or you have the computer, but you need to download that. So any kind of tools that you need based on your personal preferences, and then connect your devices. And so the great thing is you use the same account no matter where you are. So if I'm on my phone, it's synced, my laptop's synced. So you don't have to worry about that. It's very easy to use from one device to another. We talked about finding the right people to follow, connect, collaborate, start tweeting. You want to make sure you're posting creative and worthy content. There is a wide degree, you have the option to retweet something that has already been tweeted, which is great for sharing things that you have found. But I think that Twitter is often underutilized for creative purposes in the fact that creating your own original content and tweeting that out. So I always encourage to be creative and to write your own posts in addition to retweeting other worthy content. Of course, always be polite and professional. Keep in mind it is a social media outlet. So, you don't want to put anything on the internet that you don't want broadcasted in a newspaper or on the 9 o'clock news at night, and that will follow you into your next job interview. So you always want to be polite and professional. They have what's called Follow Friday, and this is something that you may or may not be aware of. On Fridays, usually people will post some of their recommendations for people to follow because that changes based on whatever's going on and people being added every day and people becoming active or inactive. And this is a way to increase your network both quantitatively and qualitatively. Create a Twitter list. This is it's not really new. It's been around for a little bit, but you can actually create subgroups or Twitter lists. For example, this is great as a teacher because you could have a Twitter list of your first block, or your section 1. You can have a Twitter list for section, and then you can communicate with them as a part of that list. So that's a nice little added functionality they added. And then we talked about linking or embedding on your website. If you have a classroom or a blog, anything like that, you can do your feed or your handle. There's lots of different ways to link or embed to that. Again, create, don't just consume. You have those people, troll, I always love that term, or stalkers, not as stalker as much, that just all they do is read and read and read, and they don't really, and that's fine. That's fine. If they're getting something out of it, that's great. But I just encourage you to actively participate, again, in a meaningful way, in a productive way, to impact both yourself and the others around you. Connect, network, share your resource, and just keep at it. I mean, it's okay if some days you don't check it and you're gone for a week or two and then you come back, because life happens and you do whatever's best for you in that particular situation at that time. All right, so we have reached the end of the formal presentation, and I wanted to share, this is a neat little app called Visible Tweets. Hopefully during this time you have been tweeting, and if you go to Visible Tweets, I've created a tiny URL for it, but if you click on it, we should be able to see now, see if I can open it up, see what everybody has tweeted. It will load, and you can choose how to display it. So you can see James Bell posted there. And up here, this is great if you present, or for example, if you're a teacher in a class and you have your students having a conversation and participate basically in a Twitter chat, but live, then you can put this on the board so that they can see what's going on and what others are saying. And it's just a visual way for them to see the conversation that's happening, in a different way. So really cool little site, visibletweets.com. And then really quickly before we leave, I'll just show you Hootsuite here. So you can see this is my home page. And to refresh, you just click refresh and it'll refresh that particular, they're called streams. You can add a stream, which is like you see here, the columns. Each one of these is a stream. And you can have all different ones, and it depends on what kind of account you have. This is a free account that I'm showing you right now. I'm cheap, so I don't pay for anything I really, really, really don't have to have. And then again, I mentioned that Hootsuite specifically, you can compose and have multiple organizations. So here I have Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and then I can choose if I want multiple, if I want to post to all of them, or if I just want to, for example, post to Twitter, and then I would put my tweet there. So that's Hootsuite. And I guess I'll open it up if there are any questions. This is just Twitter. And I will say on Twitter, if you use Twitter on the main page, these hashtags here, these are the trends, what people are talking about at any given point in time. Sometimes these are really random and funny. There's usually sports, or right now a lot of times it's politicians, or if it's a special type day, like you can see, woohoo, we made it, Digital Learning Day. Or Random Acts of Kindness Day. I didn't even know today was Random Acts of Kindness Day. So it helps you stay active, and then you can then use that same hashtag in your own post. So I will, again, open it up for questions. Are you there, James?